Hey friends, welcome to Midweek. I just want to simply start tonight by saying thank you. Thank you for being a part of our celebration this past Sunday as we as a church celebrated 185 years together. There is a history that goes way back, and a lot of you are a part of that. And to hear your story Sunday, to watch your relationships be rekindled to some that you haven't seen for a while, and just to hear the memories that have taken place and what God has done in and through this place was just simply inspiring. The music was fantastic. The preaching on both the morning and the afternoon was fantastic. And just seeing what God has done to create a legacy within this place that points back to Him is just inspiring. And I'm excited to see what God continues to do through this church and what the future may look like. But we just simply want to start tonight by saying thank you. So thank you. Tonight, we're going to start a new series on the life of Joseph, Old Testament Joseph. He comes from the book of Genesis, and I love the book of Genesis. It literally is the beginning, talking about God's creation, how it all got started. God created people. People had power. God gave authority to the people. We gave the authority to the devil, and then all of a sudden, chaos just starts to ensue. But if you notice, all the heroes of the faith, most of them are mentioned in Genesis. There's a lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of heroes of the faith, but some of the heavy hitters, they start in Genesis. I mean, we got Abraham, we've got Isaac, we've got Jacob, we've got Joseph, and there's just a lot of different stories that take place in the book of Genesis, and they're great. And you may be asking this question, well, how can stories of people who have lived 4,000 to 5,000 years ago impact my life today? Well, that's a great question, and if you'll just buckle your seatbelt, we're going to go on a ride for the next few weeks, and hopefully as we dissect the life of Joseph, there are going to be moments in there that resonate with you. There are going to be times in his life that can speak into yours in this moment, because God does incredible things like that. And so that's my prayer as we walk through this series on Joseph. So let's start with him, right? Joseph was the son of Jacob, right? Who's the son of Isaac, who's the son of Abraham. See how the lineage just kind of falls into place? And so Abraham had this promise that God had given him that says, listen, you are going to be the father of nations. Of nations. And then he had his son Isaac and Ishmael. And then those there too. And then Isaac had his son Jacob and Esau. And then Jacob, that's the one we're talking about, who later becomes Israel. His name gets changed when he has this little wrestling match with God. And he sucker punches his hip and he says, you'll forever be known as Israel. And then Israel has 12 sons. He also has a daughter as well, but that's not really the point of the story. And so we get the 12 tribes of Israel from this moment in history. And Joseph is a part of that. And so what happens is, let me ask you this as we just kind of move forward. How does it feel to be the favorite? Have you ever been the favorite of anything? Maybe your mom and dad's favorite? You may not think so, but your siblings are pointing to you right now. Maybe you were the teacher's favorite. Maybe you were the coach's favorite. Who knows? Have you ever been the favorite of anything? Because there's a feeling beyond that, right? There's the feeling. I remember a moment in my life. I was in college, and we were getting ready to play a basketball game. This was just a little pickup game. Now, I'll tell you, I know that I look like I'm the greatest athlete in the world. I know that. But let's just be honest, I'm really not. There's a few things I can do well, and basketball is not one of them. But I'm in this game. I'm in this pickup game. We're just out there having some fun. And all of a sudden we do the lineup, you know, like they do in school where you line up and you get picked. And so I remember sitting over there and I'm like, well, this is going to be, you know, I'm going to be the last guy picked because I'm a hefty fella. I can't jump very good and my eyesight's terrible. And just everything about basketball, I'm not very good at. You know, even blocking, I'm not that good. I've got short legs. I can't really get a good box step out. And I'm just terrible at the whole sport. And I remember that moment, I was picked first in my buddy's team. And so I went over there and I was like, I have no idea why you're picking me first, but man, it feels good to be chosen. And he gave me some super spiritual answer that is like, hey, I didn't pick you because you were good at basketball. I picked you because I wanted you to be on my team. And it just felt good to be chosen, right? It just feels good to be number one somewhere. And that was Joseph. The problem with Joseph is that he knew he was number one. He knew that he was Dad's favorite. In fact, the Bible tells us that he was Dad's favorite, so much so that his dad created a robe to give to him to really show that Dad loves you. So now flip that side. Now imagine you're on the other side of the story. You're not number one. In fact, you're the one that always gets picked last. You're the person that's always behind the scenes. You're the guy who is always over here doing work while these people over here are being rewarded. Those are the brothers of Joseph. And so they're out there working in the field. You know, imagine that you have siblings and You were outside working all the time. You're the one doing the chores. And then all of a sudden you see your brother or sister who you know is dad's favorite. And you start to wonder in your mind, well, why aren't they going outside? Why am I doing all the chores and they get to have quality time with dad? Those are great questions. And that's what they're pondering. And so they are just kind of grumbling amongst each other, and they get sent off to go to work. And then all of a sudden, this is a typical day for Joseph. And he gets asked by his dad. He says, hey, go check on the boys. Go see how they're doing. Take them some lunch. Just a typical day for Joseph. Have you ever had a typical day, though, that just seemed like everything was going normal? You wake up, you have your morning cup of coffee, you get in the shower, you get dressed for work, maybe not necessarily in that order, but you have your routine. And you get up and you start to live out your day as if it's a typical day. The sun's shining, you're in a happy place, and all of a sudden, boom, tragedy strikes. Out of nowhere, tragedy strikes. And this day that seemed to be just a typical day, just another day, ends up becoming your worst nightmare. That's what Joseph's about to walk through. You see, his brothers are out in the field, and his dad, he says, listen, you need to go out there and you need to check on your brothers. Take them some lunch. And so he goes out there and he goes into the land that's nearby and he goes to find his brothers. And they can see him coming from a mile away because he's wearing this beautiful robe that his father had made for him. That his father had made for him. And so he's got this beautiful robe. It's been gifted to him. And he has got this pride. I mean, when you wear something that dad has given you to show you that you're the favorite, you're going to wear that thing proudly. And he certainly did. And so as the brothers see him coming from a distance, they start to think, what can we do? Because they hate him so much that they plot to kill him. One, because of the pride that he carries. It's one thing to be the favorite. It's the other thing to show that you're the favorite. But then he tells two dreams. We're in Genesis 37 if you're wanting to follow along in your Bible. But then he starts to tell them two dreams that basically say this. There is going to be a day where you guys come and you bow at my feet. Now, he doesn't really understand what all that means, and neither do they, but they look at that as him just being arrogant and saying that we're going to come and have to worship you someday, and that's not the point. But what God is giving them is a prophecy of what's to come in Joseph's life. And even if his brothers were to have that explained to them, they probably wouldn't believe it anyway. They probably wouldn't even care because they already hated him. They already didn't like him. But now this set them over the edge. So not only is he prideful, not only is he boasting in the fact that he's dad's favorite, but now he's having dreams and telling us that there's going to be a day where we have to bow to him, where we have to be under his authority. And so as older brothers, that's terrible news. Right? This kid that we already don't like, who already is dad's favorite, is now saying to us that at one point in our life, we're going to have to surrender to him. And this is a prophecy that they don't even realize is about to take place. Joseph probably didn't have a clue either. He's just interpreting the dreams. He had that gift. And so now they're over the edge. They hate him. Absolutely hate him. And they see him walking and they start to plot to kill him. I mean, imagine if your siblings start to have a meeting about how they want to kill you. And what a normal day for Jacob is about to turn into a disaster. And so they basically throw him in a well and they just kind of wait to decide what to do. One of the brothers comes to his senses and he says, listen, we can't kill him. That's going to be crazy. You know how disappointed dad's going to be. We can't do that. Let's not put his blood on our hands. Instead, we just saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming by. Let's sell him to them. That way they can put their hands on him. They can be the ones to kill him. And our hands are clean. It's funny how we do that in real life, though, isn't it? We try to manipulate situations. We try to manipulate opportunities to where instead of getting our hands dirty, instead of taking responsibility, it's easy to point the finger everywhere else. Well, all we did was sell them to the Ishmaelites. What they did with him was their business. We didn't know. So they all came together and they agreed that selling him would be the best opportunity. And so they sold him to the Ishmaelites. This day, this moment that seemed to be a typical day for Joseph, just turned into a nightmare. And all he was doing was what dad requested. Go check on your brothers. Imagine that your day, the typical day that you go to, all of a sudden turns into a nightmare. In fact, most of you have probably already been through it, right? It's the student who comes home from school where mom and dad sit them down and say, hey, we love you. We want you to understand that we love you dearly. But this just isn't working out. And so dad has to move. I'm going to get a new house and you're going to have 2 homes now. You're going to have 2 Christmas parties to go to, 2 Thanksgivings to go to, and all this stuff that we try to say to the kid to let them know what was a typical day for them is now just a nightmare. Right? We've been there before. It's the mom that comes home, the wife that comes home from work to find that her husband has been unfaithful. And what seemed to be a typical day for her at the office, she comes home to a nightmare and finds that her husband has been unfaithful in their marriage. It's the grandpa that goes to the doctor who was told just weeks ago that the cancer is moving and that everything seems to be getting better and that the medicine's working, the chemo's, everything just happens to be falling right in place, just to be told it's coming back, and it's coming back really aggressive. And we'd be real surprised if you make it beyond the year. It's the phone call that the police gives to the mom and dad who have been up waiting for their child to return home, only to find out that there's been a terrible car accident and that they need to go to the hospital. And then you go to the hospital to find out that they didn't make it because they got hit by a drunk driver. It's moments like that where you just walk into a typical day hoping and expecting everything to just run smoothly, and then all of a sudden, on the drop of a hat, everything changes. That's the life of Joseph. And what we're going to discover in the next few weeks as we dive into his life is how God continued to use him through his faithfulness. Because what he resembles the most out of any character that I know in the Bible is that he can't define his circumstances. He can't control his circumstances, but he can control his attitude within those circumstances. And so I'm so excited to walk through this journey in the next few weeks. And I don't know where you are in your life or what you're dealing with, or if you've had one of those moments where you thought it was a typical day and all of a sudden it's changed your life forever. Your whole world just got tipped upside down and you're sitting there scratching at life, just trying to make it through. And if that's you, hang on. Because there is a God who loves you and he's about to show himself in a mighty way through Joseph. And I pray that his story is encouraging to you, that you find hope in your struggle, and that know that this life is never promised to be easy, but that God will always walk through it with you. And so, friends, I'm excited to go through this journey. I know it's kind of hard to end on a sobering, hard note like that, but I don't want to get into next week's lesson until next week. And so I just want to say this before we close, though, that if you are hurting, if life just seems to be throwing curveballs at you and you just can't seem to figure out which way's up or down, we are here. We are here, and we want to get to know you, and we want to share in your story. But most of all, we want you to know this, that God loves you. In fact, he's crazy about you, so much so that he gave his son to die on a cross so that you can have hope, so that you can have freedom, so that you can have him. And we rest in that. Have a great week, guys, and we hope to see you next time.